This video shows how to make a coffee scoop. This coffee scoop I made out of cherry wood. But if you're newer to wood carving, I would recommend butternut or even basswood. Coffee scoops, you don't have to worry about them getting wet because the only thing they hold is dry coffee. So for that reason, butternut or basswood would be fine, unlike other spoons. This video is to show how to make a coffee scoop. I don't have a bandsaw or a scroll saw, so I use coping saws and hand saws. So I've already marked out the light blue area is the area I'm keeping. This shows what it looks like on the side. What will be left is the light blue area. I'm using cherry wood. I started with a piece of firewood. And the first thing I did was try to get the top as flat as I could. And then to mark the circle, I used the bottom of a prescription bottle that was large. It's 2 inches across. So you can use whatever you happen to have handy to trace a circle around. And after I got the circle, then I measured carefully to try and get the center. That gives me an idea of where to put the handle. And I added a 1/2 inch on one side of the center and a 1/2 inch on the other side of the center. You always want to make it a little bit bigger than you actually want to end up with, because the time you trim it here and trim it there, it will be smaller. I put the prescription bottle down here. I lined it up with the edge of the top to show where it will be. Traced around that as deep as I wanted it. Then I roughly just drew in this part. The handle, you can make it even with the top. I like to make mine a little bit lower. I think it just looks nicer. Also, my handle is going to have a bend right here. If you prefer to make yours easier, you could just forget that bend and make it straight. So, after you get it like that, then what you will want to do is, I'm taking a coping saw. I might use a hand saw. You lay it on the side like so, and you saw where this dotted line is. Straight down the side until you get to the edge of your handle. You try to not go too far. Turn it over. Saw on this dotted line till you get to the edge of the handle. And after you saw both sides, you turn it over where these dotted lines are. You saw straight down this line here until you get to the end of that dotted line. You do that on both sides, and that removes this piece of wood here on the side, and it removes this piece of wood on the other side. After you do that, you saw off the corners. I try to saw near where I want, but not too close, because I can't saw a straight line for nothing. It always ends up as a crazy angle, and then there's a risk of cutting off part you want to keep. So I cut near that area, but not too close. And then I can trim it up with the knife after that. You trim off both corners. I got the two side pieces removed, and the two corners is removed. Now what I'm doing is, this is where I want the handle to be. If you prefer, you can have your handle up at the top like this, and you don't have to have the bend in it. So then you just have a straight line, and you would put a dotted line here and saw straight down, so you could remove that area there. But what I'm doing is, I did a stop cut with the coping saw across through here, straight across, and down to the edge where the handle starts. I also did two more deep stop cuts with the coping saw, straight across here and straight across here, because I'm leaving this area. And so the stop cuts goes up to where the handle is in both places, and I'm just going to use a knife, and I'm going to remove this area here and this area here. The wood I'm using is from firewood, and it's cherry. It's also a year old. It was from a stack of firewood that has been covered for a year. I don't know anything about using green wood, because I've always used the seasoned wood. The next thing you would do after all that's done, you trim down to that ink line. So it's a straight piece, straight down. After you do that, then the bowl, you start rounding it off till you get it nice and round, something like you would round off a ball. After you get it rounded, then you need to empty out the inside of the scoop. You can use a spoon hook knife, and what I'm going to do, it's called mortising. I use a drill bit and a rotary tool like a Dremel, and you drill straight down very close together many times. You drill over and over and over, really close together, being careful, because the outer edge here, you're going to keep the outer edge, so you just drill in the center area, and you try not to drill too deep. If you have a bigger drill bit and you're using a drill, you can mark the drill bit with a piece of tape, and the piece of tape will help you gauge the depth of which you're drilling, because you don't want to drill too deep and you don't want to accidentally get too far over to the edges. After you drill many holes, I take the drill bit and I turn it at an angle, and I drill at an angle, and I bust up a lot of that, and then I'm going to use a rotary burr, a power burr, and I'm going to work that area out and finish it with the burr, and then get down to the bottom and use a gouge. But you could also use a knife after you use the drill, and use a knife to clean out all the extra bits. I'm sure there's simpler ways to do these, but this is the tools that I have, and I am a beginner wood carver, so this video is to help other beginner wood carvers. I've gotten the coffee scoop done up to this point. I have drilled a lot of holes close together, as close together as I could get them. And then after I drilled a bunch of holes together, I went in at an angle and drilled them all the way around. You can go deeper at the center and not as deep on the outer edges. The way I removed the excess wood right here, I had a deep stop cut here and one here that I did with a coping saw. And then I used a drill and a long drill bit and drilled a line of holes in a row, side by side, all the way across. And after I drilled the holes, I used the drill bit and went in between where the holes was drilled and broke that area up, and the area popped right out. So now what I do is go back with the knife and just break that through. Kind of just go in there and slightly twist, and it comes right out. Now this wood is cherry, and I've had it in the house for a few months, so it's dried out. It's really hard. So most of what I'm doing here is with the rotary tool. This is a Dremel bit. It works really well. I have a cheap generic rotary tool. It was $15 on sale Christmas season, and they last me about a year before I need to replace them. And then I buy Dremel bits for it. So I'll use this to finish working out a lot of that. And at the bottom I'll use a gouge to scoop out the rest. You could also use butternut for this, or even basswood. A coffee scoop, you can use woods different for it than you might like a spoon that you would use in hot liquids and soups and things. The coffee scoops only hold dry coffee. So butternut would be an excellent wood for this. It's softer, and you could do more of it with a knife. I like making the handles this way. One reason is it sets like that on the counter. The other reason is you can hold it like this with a finger looped around and a thumb up here. So it just makes it nicer to hold that way. But you could just skip that part down here. This is what the coffee scoop looks like finished. I ended up using this rotary burr and did most of the work with that. After I got done with that part of it, then I used the sanding drum. This is also a Dremel bit, but you can also get other name brands of sanding drums. They make it handy because after a while you get tired of doing so much hand sanding. This one's coarse. With this one you can also do a little bit of the shaping, like just the little fine details of shaping. And then after this, there's a medium one that you can finish sanding with. Then I go to sandpaper, coarse, medium, fine, and then I use extra fine. With the coffee scoops, there's this kind of handle. You could also just make it without the piece here, just a long piece of wood instead. And you can also make them wide and flat, like so. In this one, I believe I got it a little too wide to look good. A little narrower might look better. And then I scooped out an area in the handle for place for the thumb. These hold enough for to make 3 cups of coffee, and it was 2 inches across from the outer edges. You can make them different sizes, a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, whichever you prefer.